we now have our original survey scan with the graphics labeling. What we would like to do now is load and manipulate some of the multiplex data which we acquired from area number 2. To do that, we first need to go to the directory and find out the file name of the multiplex data. Let's first clear our screen, holding the Control key down and pressing the clear key. We can now enter the directory, which is function key number 13. We need to be sure that our subfile instruction is highlighted, which it is. We now can ask to list files, which is soft key number 2. We also want an extended listing so we can tell whether the file name is a survey scan, a map, or multiplex, because we are looking for the multiplex file. To do that, we will press soft key number 3 and toggle to extended. And to execute the list files, we press soft key number 1. We see that our multiplex data is stored under file name MWT103. We can now exit the directory with soft key number 8. Continue to exit the directory, soft key number 8. And we can now enter the load menu by pressing function key number 15. Let's load the multiplex on the second line. To do that, we press function key number 2. Line number 2 is now highlighted. And we can enter the file name MWT103. Enter. And we see the comments microwave transistor. We are now ready to display that menu, which is soft key number 1. And we have now entered the multiplex display menu. At this point, we could actually display and manipulate both of these files. In the load command, as we had seen earlier, we can actually load 3 data files at the same time. When those data files are loaded, the file names appear on line number 1 and can be toggled to whichever file we wish to manipulate. MWT103 is now highlighted. That is the file we wish to manipulate, so we will leave that highlighted. For the multiplex data file MWT103, we looked at only one area, that being area number 2. This area is telling us that we have only one choice in this particular data, and that is the one area which we acquired. Line number 2 will allow us to select which region we wish to display. We multiplexed. Region number 1 was carbon, region 2 was nitrogen, region 3 was oxygen, and region 4 was tantalum. Let's first look at region number 1. So we will leave a 1 in the region display, and we will then ask to display that data by pressing soft key number 1. This is the NAV data for region number 1, area number 2 on the microwave transistor. which is our carbon peak. Let's enter the data massage menu by pressing soft key number 5. To demonstrate some of the massage functions, let's go to our next data bank by pressing function key 23. Let's go to our next data bank, again pressing function key number 23, and once more function key 23. I am looking for the data bank with the miscellaneous data massage routines that was on data bank 3, which we now have displayed. I should also point out that if there is a massage function which is assigned to a soft key that is not valid for the type of display that we are using or for the type of data that we are manipulating, that key will be masked. Notice soft keys number 1 and 2. Right now they have no functions assigned to those soft keys. In our original data bank they have functions, but because they are not valid on multiplex data, they are masked and do not allow us to manipulate this data using those functions. That is true in all of our soft key data banks. For example, on survey scan, we cannot ask for the atomic concentration. Also on a survey scan, we cannot ask for an atomic concentration profile. So those keys will be masked, very similar to the way soft keys number 1 and number 2 are now masked. What I would first like to demonstrate is area under the curve, which is soft key number 3. What we can do is enter the area menu by holding the shift key and pressing soft key number 3. Once again, a lot of our information is being masked by the graphics labeling. So once again, I would like to quickly toggle the graphics label off. To do that, we first need to exit the area menu by pressing soft key number 8. We can now hold the shift key and press function key 14 and toggle the graphics label off. Let's re-enter the area menu by holding the shift key and pressing soft key number 3. We see now the definition of our endpoints, the lower limit now being set at 262, the upper limit being set at 274. When we ask for the area, it will then give us the area under that curve. What I would like to do is move the upper limit a little bit higher. I can do that by first pressing function key number 2, and then using the left-right arrows, I can now move the upper limit to define where I want the area under which curve. It will now draw a line and connect the intersection of our carbon curve and the intersection of our cursor on both sides and calculate the area under that curve. Let's move the lower limit up a little bit to here. So we do that by pressing function key 1 and then again using the arrows. We have now defined the curve we would like to know the area under. To then ask for the area, we press soft key number 1, and we see that the calculation for the area under the curve is 2,556,609. Those are in units. We can then compare those with the area under the curve for our other graphs in this multiplex data. Once again, this is just to demonstrate how we would calculate, using the computer, the area under a curve. Now that we are finished, we can exit the area menu by pressing soft key number 8. Next, I would like to demonstrate baseline subtract. Once again, to enter that menu, we hold the shift key and then press the soft key corresponding with the data massage routine we wish to operate, that being, in this case, soft key number 4. We see at the top very similar endpoints which we can move using the cursor. Again, I would like to change the upper limit to a value higher than what it is set at. Notice I can also enter those values if I do not have to slew them using the cursor, but I can enter a number. For example, if I press function key number 2, I can enter the value 275, and we will watch the cursor move to value 275. Again, if I am not sure of the value, I can then use the cursor and slew to the value where I wish to subtract the baseline. Looking now at the full screen, we can activate baseline subtract by pressing soft key number 1. And we see that the baseline has been subtracted to the left of the lower excursion and to the right of the upper cursor. To exit the baseline subtract menu, we press soft key number 8. What I would like to do now is redisplay the original data for the carbon peak. We want to get back to the multiplex display menu. To do that, we hold the soft key and press function key number 15, which will re-enter the display menu. We see now that for region number 1, we can display either the massage data or the original data, which is saying no to massage data. What I would like is the original data, so I will leave line number 3 toggled to no. I do want to look at region number 1 again, so we can now redisplay that by pressing soft key number 1. Again, let's enter the data massage, pressing soft key number 5. What I would like to do is differentiate this peak. Again, if I press differentiate, I have it set at 9-point differentiation. It will automatically do a 9-point differentiation. What I would like to do is a 5-point differentiation, which duplicates what happens when I ask for the atomic concentration. That way I can evaluate the peak structure and see exactly what the computer sees when it calculates the peak-to-peak height for the atomic concentration. To do that, we hold the shift key and press soft key number 7. We have now entered the differentiation menu. Notice that the endpoint differentiate is now set at 9. What I would like to do is change that to 5. And then to execute the differentiate, I press soft key number 1. Let's exit the differentiate menu, pressing soft key number 8. We now see the differentiated carbon peak. Within this energy window, we see that if we ask for an atomic concentration, we indeed will be measuring the peak to peak height of the carbon peak itself and not an adjacent peak. This is important to determine because when we ask for an atomic concentration, we could also define a new window within this window. For example, if we wanted the atomic concentration calculated on this peak, but not the major peak, we could set a window to encompass a peak within this energy range. It would then measure the peak-to-peak height of the differentiated peak within the newly defined window. Very similar to a profile redefine, which we will be discussing when we manipulate the profile data. Next, what I would like to do is demonstrate the shift routine. We see that that is not in this data bank, so we will go to the previous data bank by pressing function key number 22. We see that it is also not on this data bank, so we can go to the previous data bank, once again pressing function key 22. Now we see the shift command, soft key number 3. To enter the shift menu, we again hold the shift key on the keyboard and press soft key number 3. We see here the shift menu. We can enter the initial energy point either with a cursor or by entering the value itself. And then we can enter the shifted energy point where we would like that initial energy point to be shifted to, and we will then get an offset reading as to how far that peak has been shifted, either in the positive direction or the negative direction. To demonstrate that, let's look at the full screen. We see that the peak is set at 272. So our initial energy point is at 272. Let's say we would like to shift that energy point to 270. What we can do is press function key number 2, enter a shifted energy point of 270. The second cursor will then move to 270. Our offset reading is a -2 volts. We can then execute the shift by pressing soft key number 1. We will see the curve be redrawn with the negative most excursion at 270. We now see the shifted carbon peak from 272 to an energy of 270. Now that we are finished with the shift menu, we can exit by pressing soft key number 8. Let's toggle our graphics back on, again by holding the shift key and pressing function key 14. Let's evaluate region number 2. Let's first clear the graph, holding the control key and pressing the clear key. Once again, we want to get to the multiplex display menu, holding the shift key and pressing function key 15. We would now like to look at region number 2. So pressing the function key number 2, and typing in region 2 and enter. We can now display that region pressing soft key number 1. This is our nitrogen peak. Let's enter our data massage menu. Let's go to the previous data bank, pressing function key number 22. Let's differentiate this, shift and soft key number 1. Our differentiation is set at 5 points where we want it, so we can execute differentiate, pressing soft key number 1. And exit the differentiation mode, soft key number 8. We now see the differentiated nitrogen peak using a 5-point differentiation. Once again, we also see that the window is set correctly and that we will get an accurate atomic concentration calculated for the differentiated nitrogen peak. To demonstrate the atomic concentration, let's go to our next data bank, function key number 23, and pressing function key number 23 one more time. We now see a soft key which allows us to calculate the atomic concentration. Let's first clear the graph, holding the control key and the clear. Let's enter the atomic concentration menu by holding the shift key and pressing soft key number 3. We see now that we have a number of regions displayed. Region number 1 tells me that the element name is carbon. If I toggle function key number 1 to region 2, it tells me that the element name is nitrogen. Region 3 is oxygen, and region 4 is tantalum. Looking at the soft keys at the bottom of the screen, we see soft key number 1 allows us to ask for the atomic concentration table. The table consists of the element name, its concentration, and the sensitivity factor used to calculate that atomic concentration. Soft key number 4 allows us for any region to select the endpoints. I had mentioned that when we looked at the carbon peak, if we have overlapping peaks and we are contributing to the peak-to-peak height because of an overlapping peak, what we can do is select a window within that energy region which defines the specific peak we wish to calculate for the atomic concentration. To do that, we would use the select endpoints command, which is soft key number 4. Soft key number 5 will allow us to omit a region. We can toggle to that region, as I demonstrated previously, by pressing function key number 1. The region we have toggled to when we press soft key number 5, that region will then be omitted, and when we ask for the atomic concentration table, it will then calculate that atomic concentration without using the region which we have omitted. Let's first demonstrate the select endpoints, and let's select the endpoints for region number 1. So we will toggle region number 1 by pressing function key number 1, toggling it to 1, which is our carbon peak. To select the endpoints, we then press soft key number 4, and it will display that energy region in the NOV mode. Once again, we can choose our left and right endpoints, either by typing in the value or by moving the cursor. Let's choose our left endpoint here, and to move our right endpoint, function key number 2, and cursor to this value. Once again, we have already evaluated the carbon peak and determined that we did not need to define endpoints. But if we did need to define endpoints, this would be the method and the menu that we would use. Now that we have defined those endpoints, we are done, so we can press soft key number 8. Let's now ask for the atomic concentration table by pressing soft key number 1. This gives us the atomic concentration, telling us the element, the percent concentration, the sensitivity factor used to calculate the atomic concentration, and the file name. To demonstrate the omit region, let's, for example, oxygen is quite small. Let's omit the nitrogen so that we can find out how much carbon, oxygen, and tantalum is there without calculating for nitrogen. Nitrogen is region number 2, pressing function key number 1 until we toggle to the nitrogen element, being region number 2. We can then omit that by pressing soft key number 5. And we can now ask for the new atomic concentration parameters, soft key number 3. We have a new menu that asks if we want the selected regions or all of the regions. We want the selected, meaning we will not include the nitrogen. And by pressing soft key number 1, we get the atomic concentration table without the nitrogen. To obtain a copy of this, we press the print key. Holding the control key and print gives us a copy of the graph. Since we do not have a graph, we want a copy of the analog display. And a copy of the analog display is achieved by simply pressing the print key without holding the control key. Once we have that copy, we can exit this menu. To obtain the atomic concentration information without including the region information located in the upper left corner of the screen, we can simply press atomic concentration, which is soft key number 3, get a printout of the atomic concentration table, this time with all of the elements included. And again, to make a hard copy of that, we then press the print key. Let's demonstrate one more function with the multiplex data. To again get to the multiplex display menu, we hold the Shift key and press function key 15. Let's start out and display region number 1, pressing function key 2, typing in region number 1, enter. We do not want the massage data, and we can ask to display soft key number 1. Let's now look at region number 2, typing in a 2 and enter. And let's display add automatically using the soft keys at the bottom of the screen. Soft key number 1 would display only region number 2, erasing the carbon region which we presently have displayed. Display add full would add the second region, which is nitrogen, full scale onto the same graph as our carbon. Soft key number 3 will display the nitrogen peak and carbon peak at their relative intensities. Let's first demonstrate soft key number 2, which is display add full. We see in red the carbon peak, full scale, and added to the graph in green at the proper energy is the nitrogen peak, also full scale. Let's now display add auto, which is soft key number 3. We now see that the carbon peak is quite large, but it is not expanded full scale, so it is very difficult to see. And we also see that the nitrogen peak is very, very small. It was a weak peak, and also is very difficult to see. The best method of displaying this data would then be to use the display add full. Let's first once again display region number 1. So we will change region, function key number 2, change that to region 1, and we will ask to display soft key number 1. Let's now change the region number to 2 and display add full, soft key number 2. We could then exit this and obtain a hard copy holding the control key and print. Let's re-enter the data massage by pressing function key number 21. Takes us to our massage bank. We can then enter data massage pressing soft key number 5. What I would like to do is differentiate both of these. This is really the first time that we have displayed two pieces of data on the same graph. Let's go to the next data bank using function key number 23. Let's use the 5-point differentiation. What we now need to do is hold the shift key and enter the differentiate mode. by holding the Shift key and pressing soft key number 7. The curve that we will differentiate is highlighted. We now see a new command. Soft key number 6 allows us to pick a new curve. We can display many more than 2 curves. When we have multiple curves displayed and we ask for a function, whether it be to smooth or differentiate or shift, the software needs to know which of the curves that are displayed it should apply the function to. So what we need to do is pick that curve, and that curve will then be highlighted. The curve that is now highlighted is the nitrogen peak. We can do a 5-point differentiation. To execute, we then press soft key number 1. We now see the nitrogen peak is differentiated, and the carbon peak is still in the N of E mode. What we would now like to do is utilize the pick curve command by pressing soft key number 6. We now have 2 choices. Soft key number 2 allows us to choose the previous curve, and soft key number 3 allows us to choose the next curve. So if we had multiple curves, we could go from one curve to the next curve, next curve, next curve, and apply this function to all of the curves sequentially. In this case, since we have only 2 curves, it doesn't matter whether we choose the previous curve or next curve, it will be the carbon peak. So let's choose the next curve by pressing soft key number 3. And we now see that the carbon peak is highlighted. If that is the curve we wish to manipulate, we then want to pick that curve, which is soft key number 1. And we can now differentiate the new curve, which is the carbon peak, by again pressing soft key number 1. And we now have a display of the differentiated carbon peak and nitrogen peak on the same graph. We can exit the differentiate menu using soft key number 8 and obtain a hard copy holding the control key and pressing print. Let's toggle the graphics labeling off by holding the Shift key and pressing function key number 14. Let's also clear the screen by holding the control key and clear. And let's re-enter the multiplex display menu by holding the Shift key and pressing function key 15. What I would like to do is display region number 1, pressing function key number 2 and typing in region 1. And I would also like to display the massage data, function key 3, toggling that to yes. That will be our differentiated carbon peak. And to display that, I press soft key number 1. The reason I toggled the graphics label off is so that we could more easily see this part of our menu. Now I would like to display add region number 2, changing the region number to 2 and entering. We want the differentiated data, so we will leave the massaged data on yes. And we want to display add auto so that we can see the peak height relation of carbon to nitrogen, pressing soft key number 3. Our previous graph showed carbon peak full scale and nitrogen peak full scale. With the display add auto, we now see the relation of carbon peak to the nitrogen peak. If you remember, in our multiplex, we did 10 sweeps on the carbon data and 3 sweeps on the nitrogen. 10 sweeps gave us much stronger signal than the 3 sweeps on nitrogen. If we would have done 3 sweeps on the carbon, we would have had a much smaller carbon peak, because from our survey scan, we saw that the ratio of nitrogen to carbon was greater. But again, because we did more sweeps on the carbon, we have good statistics and we have a strong carbon peak which appears to be larger than the nitrogen peak. What we can do now is exit from the multiplex display menu, striking soft key number 8. Let's toggle our graphics label back on, holding the shift key and pressing function key 14. Let's enter the data massage, function key 21, and soft key 5. And let's annotate this graph, soft key number 8. Microwave transistor. This is area 2. Photo 105. Before we did any sputtering, so as received. And we have a carbon peak with 10 sweeps. And nitrogen, 3 sweeps. We can now exit the graph annotate mode and obtain a hard copy, holding the control key and print. This completes the massage section for multiplex data.